The billionaire stood at the altar, his hand trembling as he reached for the engagement ring. But instead of placing it on the CEO's daughter's finger, he turned to face the crowd and said 5 words that would shake Lagos to its core. "I cannot marry this woman." Everyone gasped. His mother fainted. Chief Okonkwo, the bride's father and the most feared oil magnate in West Africa, stood up slowly, his face dark with rage. But Obinna Azikiwe wasn't looking at any of them. His eyes were fixed on a young woman at the back of the hall, a housemaid in a simple wrapper with a glowing tribal mark on her shoulder that pulsed like a heartbeat. What was that mark? Why did it glow? And what ancient secret was about to tear apart the most powerful families in Nigeria? If you enjoy thrilling African folk tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and tell us where you are watching from. Your support means the world to us. This story begins not in Lagos, but 300 years ago in a kingdom that no longer exists on any map. The kingdom of Umwenze was the richest in all of Igbo land, blessed by Anyi, the goddess of the earth herself. But one choice, one moment of greed, caused the ground to open and swallow everything. The king, the queen, the palaces, the people, gone in a single night. Or, so the elders say. But what if they weren't gone? What if they were simply waiting to return, waiting for another chance, waiting for the mark to appear again? In the busy streets of Lagos, Adaeze woke up every morning at 4:30, before the sun could catch her secrets. She wrapped her left shoulder carefully, layer after layer of cloth, making sure no one would see what was underneath. 3 interlocking circles, dark as charcoal, but when the moon was full, they glowed like burning amber. Her grandmother, Mama Neka, had warned her since childhood, hide the mark, never let them see, never let them know. But who were they, and what would happen if they found out? Adaeze worked as a housemaid in Ikoyi, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Lagos, cleaning the homes of people who would never notice her face. She sent every naira back to her village in Enugu State, where her 3 younger siblings waited for school fees, and her grandmother guarded secrets older than Nigeria itself. Every night, Adaeze dreamt the same dream. A man with kind eyes and heavy shoulders, standing in a burning palace, reaching for her hand. Every night, she woke up with tears on her face. Every night, she wondered who he was. Obinna Azikiwe didn't believe in dreams or ancestors or any of the old ways his mother clung to like a drowning woman clings to wood. He was a billionaire at 35, self-made, educated abroad, with a tech empire that stretched from Lagos to London. He lived in a penthouse with a view of the Atlantic Ocean, drove cars that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, and attended parties where champagne flowed like water. But every night for the past 6 months, he woke up screaming. The same nightmare, a woman with a glowing mark, a kingdom on fire, and a choice he made that destroyed everything. What choice? He didn't know. He couldn't remember. But the guilt felt real enough to choke him. His mother, Mama Nkechi, had had enough. She was a traditional woman, born in the village, who moved to Lagos only after her husband died and left her with wealth she never asked for. She performed libations every morning, poured palm wine for the ancestors every evening, and believed that her son's nightmares were a warning. You need to marry, she told him, before your 36th birthday, before the gods lose patience, before something terrible happens. Obinna laughed it off, but mothers always know more than sons want to admit. Mama Nkechi arranged everything. The bride would be Chinara Okonkwo, daughter of Chief Okonkwo, the man who controlled half the oil flowing out of the Niger Delta. Beautiful Chinara, who studied at Oxford, spoke 5 languages, and wore designer clothes like armor. The perfect match, the perfect alliance, 2 empires joining to become unstoppable. Everyone in Lagos society said so. Everyone. Except Obinna, who felt nothing when he looked at her, except a cold, creeping dread he couldn't explain. The introduction ceremony was planned on a Saturday afternoon at Mama Nkechi's compound, a sprawling estate in Ikoyi that blended modern luxury with traditional architecture. Mama Nkechi hired extra staff for the event, and that's how Adaeze ended up serving palm wine to the billionaire who would change her life forever. She kept her head down, her wrapper secure, her movements quiet, invisible, safe. But fate doesn't care about safety. Obinna sat in the parlor, surrounded by relatives he barely knew, listening to Chief Okonkwo list his daughter's accomplishments like he was selling a prized cow. Chinara smiled beside her father, her beauty polished and perfect, her eyes calculating every word. Obinna's head pounded. The nightmare from last night still clung to his thoughts like smoke. And then Adaeze walked in with a calabash of palm wine. Their eyes met. The world stopped. Obinna felt like he'd been struck by lightning. He knew this woman, not from Lagos, not from this life, from somewhere deeper, somewhere older, from the dreams. Adaeze nearly dropped the calabash. Her hands shook so hard, the wine sloshed over the rim. This was the man from her nightmares, the king, the one who reached for her hand in the burning palace, the one who let her fall. She backed away quickly, her heart hammering against her ribs. But it was too late. Something had already begun, something that couldn't be stopped. That night, Obinna couldn't sleep at all. He stood on his balcony, staring at the ocean, trying to make sense of what he felt. He'd met thousands of women in his life, beautiful women, intelligent women, women who threw themselves at his wealth and power, but none of them had ever made him feel like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. Who was she? The housemaid with the sad eyes and careful movements? Why did looking at her feel like remembering something he'd forgotten? 2 days later, Mama Nkechi announced the engagement. In 2 weeks, Obinna would officially propose to Chinara at a grand party attended by everyone who mattered in Lagos. The date was set, the hall was booked, the dowry negotiations had begun. Chief Okonkwo made it clear that backing out now would be an insult his family would never forgive. And in Lagos, insulting Chief Okonkwo was the same as signing your death warrant. Obinna agreed to everything. He had no choice, or so he thought. But he couldn't stop thinking about the maid. He asked his mother's housekeepers who she was. Adaeze, from Umueze village in Enugu State. Quiet girl, hard worker, sends all her money home, no trouble, nothing special. Except Obinna knew that was a lie. There was something about her, something hidden, something that called to him like a voice from the grave. 3 days before the engagement party, a thunderstorm hit Lagos with the kind of fury that makes old people pray and young people wonder if the world is ending. The rain came down in sheets, the wind tore roofs off buildings, and lightning split the sky every few seconds. Mama Nkechi's house lost power. In the darkness and chaos, Adaeze ran through the corridors carrying candles and towels, trying to help the older staff secure the windows. She slipped on the wet marble floor. Her wrapper came loose, and the mark was revealed. Obinna had come to check on his mother during the storm. He was walking down the corridor with a flashlight when he saw Adaeze fall. He rushed to help her up, and that's when he saw it. 3 interlocking circles on her left shoulder, glowing in the darkness like molten gold. The air left his lungs. His flashlight fell from his hands. He'd seen this mark before. In every nightmare, in every dream, in every memory that wasn't supposed to be his. "What is that?" he whispered. "Who are you?" Adaeze pulled away from him, tears streaming down her face, her hands desperately trying to cover the mark. "Please," she begged, "please don't tell anyone. Please. I'll lose my job. I'll lose everything." But Obinna wasn't listening. He was staring at the mark, at her face, at the truth that was crashing down on him like the thunder outside. "I know you," he said. "I've always known you. We've done this before, haven't we?" Before Adaeze could answer, Mama Nkechi appeared at the end of the corridor with 2 housekeepers, her face shocked and afraid. She saw the mark. She saw her son staring at the maid like a man who just found something he'd lost a lifetime ago. And she knew. She'd heard the old stories from her own grandmother, stories about the marked ones, stories about curses that don't die, stories about choices that echo through time. She grabbed Obinna's arm. "Come with me," she said, her voice shaking. "Now. We need to talk. Now." In Mama Nkechi's private prayer room, surrounded by candles and carved images of ancestors, she told her son the truth she'd hoped he'd never need to hear. The kingdom of Umueze was real. It fell 300 years ago because of a choice made by King Obiefuna. He was engaged to marry Adaorah, a priestess marked by the goddess Ani herself. But on the wedding day, the king changed his mind. A foreign princess arrived with promises of gold and trade routes and power beyond imagination. The king broke his vow to Adaorah. He chose wealth over love. He chose power over destiny, and the goddess's rage swallowed the entire kingdom. But the story doesn't end there, Mama Nkechi continued, her hands trembling as she lit another candle. The curse was specific. King Obiefuna and Adaorah would be reborn again and again, lifetime after lifetime, until the king finally chose differently, until he chose love over power, until he honored the vow he broke. And every lifetime, Mama Nkechi whispered, the priestess is marked, so the king can find her, so he can make the choice again. Obinna stared at his mother. "You think I'm the king? You think that maid is the priestess? You think we are cursed?"
Mama Nkechi didn't answer right away. She just looked at her son with eyes full of sorrow and fear. "Do you dream of fire?" she asked quietly. "Do you dream of a woman you're supposed to save but never do? Do you wake up feeling like you failed someone you've never met?" Obinna's silence was answer enough. "Then yes," she said. "You are the king. She is the priestess. And in 2 weeks you are supposed to marry Chief Okonko's daughter, which means you're about to make the same choice again. Which means the curse will continue. Which means you and that girl would die, be reborn, and suffer again, unless you choose differently this time." Obinna left his mother's prayer room and went looking for Adaeze. He found her in the servants' quarters, packing her few belongings, preparing to run away before anyone could ask more questions about the mark. "Don't go," he said from the doorway. "Please, we need to talk." Adaeze shook her head, tears still streaming. "There's nothing to talk about. You're getting engaged in 2 weeks. I'm just a maid. This, whatever this is, it's not real. It can't be real." But Obinna stepped closer. "What if it is real?" he asked. "What if I've been looking for you my whole life and didn't even know it? What if everything I've built, all the money, all the power, all the success, what if it was all just a distraction from the only thing that actually matters?" Adaeze looked up at him, her eyes wide and afraid and full of something that looked like hope. "My grandmother told me stories," she whispered, "about a king who broke a promise, about a priestess who died waiting, about a mark that would appear when the souls were ready to try again. I didn't want to believe her. I thought they were just village tales. But I've dreamed about you. I've seen your face in my sleep since I was a child. And in every dream, you leave me. In every dream, you choose something else." The next morning, Obinna hired a historian named Professor Kafo an expert in Igbo folklore and pre-colonial history. They met in the professor's cluttered office at the University of Lagos, surrounded by ancient texts and fading photographs. "Tell me about Umuezi," Obinna said. "Tell me about King Obiefuna. Tell me everything." Professor Okafor leaned back in his chair, studying the billionaire carefully. "Why does a tech mogul care about a kingdom that fell 3 centuries ago?" "Because I think I was that king," Obinna answered, "and I think I'm about to make the same mistake again." Professor Okafor didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss it. Instead, he pulled out an old leather journal, its pages yellowed and fragile. "This is a record kept by a missionary who visited the region in 1727, he said, 1 year after Umueze disappeared. The villagers told him the story. King Obiefuna was beloved by his people. Adaorah, the priestess, was marked by Ani and raised in the sacred grove. Their marriage was supposed to unite the earthly kingdom with the divine realm. But a foreign princess arrived with merchants and soldiers, promising trade agreements and protection from rival kingdoms. The king was advised by his council to marry the princess instead. He agreed. On what should have been his wedding day to Adaorah, the earth opened. Witnesses from neighboring villages said they heard screaming and saw flames rising from the ground. By sunrise, Umueze was gone. Completely. No ruins, no survivors, just a massive crater that eventually became a forest. "And Adaorah?" Obinna asked. "What happened to her?" Professor Okafor turned the page carefully. "She died in the sacred grove according to the accounts. Some say she took her own life. Others say the goddess reclaimed her. But before she died, she spoke a prophecy. The king would never find peace. He would return, life after life, searching for what he lost. And she would return too, marked and waiting until he chose love, until he chose truth, until he chose her." Professor Okafor closed the journal. "So, Mr. Azikiwe, the question is simple. Do you believe in curses? Do you believe in second chances? And more importantly, what are you going to choose this time?" Obinna spent the next 3 days in a fog. The engagement party was in less than a week. The invitations had been sent. The venue was ready. Chinara called him every day to discuss details, her voice bright and excited, completely unaware that the man she was about to marry felt like he was walking toward his own execution. Chief Okonkwo called too, his tone friendly, but with an edge that suggested terrible consequences if anything went wrong. "Everything is arranged," Chief Okonkwo said. "Lagos society is watching. My business partners are watching. Don't embarrass me. Boy, don't embarrass my daughter." But Obinna couldn't stop seeing Adaeze. She tried to avoid him, tried to stay invisible again, but he found ways to talk to her. In the garden, in the hallways, in the moments between tasks when no one else was watching. He told her about Professor Okafor, about the journal, about the prophecy. She listened, her face pale, her hands gripping her wrapper like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. "What do you want from me?" she finally asked. "I'm nobody. You are a billionaire. You are about to marry into one of the most powerful families in Nigeria. Why are you risking everything for a maid you barely know?"
"Because I do know you," Obinna said. "I've known you for 300 years, and I am tired of choosing wrong." Adaeze shook her head. "You don't understand. My grandmother told me what happens if you choose me. The people who have power in this country, the ones who control things from the shadows, they've been hunting the marked ones for generations. They know about the curse. They know that if it's broken, something changes. Some balance of power shifts. They can't let that happen. If you choose me, they'll come for us, both of us." "Who are they?" Obinna demanded. Adaeze looked around nervously, as if the walls had ears. "My grandmother calls them the Society of the Red Hand. Rich men, powerful men, men who made deals with dark spirits a long time ago. Men who benefit from the curse continuing. Chief Okonkwo is one of them. That's why your mother arranged this marriage. That's why he's so eager for you to marry his daughter. They know who you are. They know who I am. And they want to make sure you choose power. Again. They want to make sure the cycle never breaks." Obinna felt ice flood his veins. "You're saying Chief Okonkwo knows about the curse?
About us? Adaeze nodded. Why do you think he wants his daughter to marry you? It's not about business. It's about control. It's about making sure the king chooses wrong again. My grandmother says they've done this before. Every time we're reborn, they find us. They manipulate circumstances. They make sure you choose wealth, or power, or status. Anything except love. Anything except me. And every time you choose wrong, we die. And the cycle starts again. And they get to keep their power. The engagement party arrived like a storm no one could stop. The venue was the Continental Hotel. The ballroom decorated in gold and white. The guest list a who's who of Nigerian elite. Politicians, oil barons, CEOs, socialites, everyone who mattered. Chinara looked stunning in a custom beaded gown, her smile confident and bright. Mama Nkechi wore traditional attire, her face carefully neutral, her prayers silent but constant. And Obinna stood at the front of the room in a designer suit, feeling like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. Adaeze was there too. Mama Nkechi had insisted she work the event, serving drinks and clearing plates. Some part of Obinna wondered if his mother did it on purpose, a test, a reminder, a last chance to see clearly before making an irreversible choice. Adaeze moved through the crowd like a ghost, invisible to everyone except the one person who couldn't stop watching her. Her mark was covered, her face carefully blank, but her eyes met his once across the crowded room. And in that look, he saw everything. All the lifetimes, all the failures, all the chances he'd wasted. Chief Okonkwo stood to give a speech. He spoke about family, about legacy, about the importance of marrying well and choosing partners who could elevate your station. He spoke about his daughter's accomplishments and Obinna's success, and how their union would create something powerful and lasting. The crowd applauded. Chinara beamed, and Obinna felt something inside him crack wide open. It was time for the traditional wine-carrying ceremony. Chinara was supposed to bring a cup of wine to Obinna, and he was supposed to drink it, symbolizing his acceptance of her as his bride. The musicians played. The guests clapped. Chinara lifted the ornate cup and walked toward Obinna with perfect grace. This was the moment. This was the choice. Power or love. Status or truth. The curse continuing or the curse breaking. Chinara reached him and held out the cup. Obinna stared at it. He stared at her. He stared at his mother, whose eyes were filled with tears and prayers. He stared at Chief Okonkwo, whose smile didn't reach his eyes. And then he stared at Adaeze, standing in the shadows by the far wall, her face resigned and heartbroken and already mourning what would never be. Obinna reached for the cup. His fingers touched the rim. The room held its breath. And then he let go. He stepped back. He turned to face the crowd. I cannot do this, he said, his voice steady and clear. I cannot marry Chinara. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts. Chinara's face went white and then red with humiliation. Mama Nkechi covered her mouth with her hands, and Chief Okonkwo stood up slowly, his face transformed into something cold and dangerous. You dare, Chief Okonkwo said, his voice low and deadly, to embarrass my family, my daughter, in front of all of Lagos? Obinna met his eyes without flinching. I am not trying to embarrass anyone, but I won't lie. I won't pretend. I won't marry someone I don't love just because it makes sense on paper. Chief Okonkwo's laugh was sharp and cruel. Love? You're a fool, boy. You're throwing away everything for a feeling? For a fantasy?
No, Obinna said. I'm choosing truth. For the first time in 300 years, I'm choosing truth. He turned and walked across the ballroom, past the shocked guests, past the whispers and gasps, straight to Adaeze. He held out his hand. Come with me, he said. Right now. Leave all of this. Choose us. Choose the chance our ancestors never had. Adaeze stared at his hand, tears streaming down her face. If I take your hand, we can't go back. If I take your hand, they'll come for us. I know, Obinna said, but I'd rather die fighting for something real than live a comfortable lie. So please, take my hand. Adaeze reached out slowly, her fingers trembling. And just as their hands were about to touch, the lights went off. Complete darkness. Screams filled the ballroom. When the emergency lights flickered on a few seconds later, Chief Okonkwo was standing between them, flanked by 6 men in dark suits. "You are not going anywhere," he said to Adaeze. "And you," he said to Obinna, "just made the biggest mistake of your life." Mama Nkechi pushed through the crowd, an old woman with her following her, a woman Obinna had never seen before but somehow recognized. This was Mama Neka, Adaeze's grandmother, the village priestess. She was small and ancient and carried a staff carved with symbols that seemed to move in the dim light. "Let them go," Mama Neka said, her voice stronger than her frail body suggested. "Let them finish what was started 3 centuries ago." Chief Okonkwo laughed. "You have no power here, old woman. This is Lagos. This is the modern world. Your gods are dead." Mama Neka struck her staff against the floor once. The sound echoed like thunder. "My gods are sleeping," she said, "but that doesn't mean they can't wake up. And you, Onyeiro Nkeala, enemy of the land, you have been stealing power that was never yours. You and your society of the Red Hand. You feed on the suffering of cursed souls. You keep the cycle going so you can drink from the well of our pain. But tonight, the well runs dry." Chief Okonkwo's face twisted with rage. He snapped his fingers and his men moved forward. But before they could reach Obinna and Adaeze, the ground shook. Not like an earthquake, like something underneath was waking up, like the earth itself was remembering anger 300 years old. Cracks appeared in the marble floor, guests screamed and rushed for the exits, and Adaeze's mark began to glow, so bright that everyone could see it now, burning through the cloth of her wrapper like a beacon. "We have to go," Mama Neka said urgently. "Back to Umwezi, back to the sacred grove. That's where the curse was born. That's where it must end." But they only have 3 days. The new moon comes in 3 days. If the ritual isn't completed by then, the cycle locks again. Another lifetime, another death, another failure. Obinna grabbed Adaeze's hand and ran. Chief Okonkwo shouted orders to his men, and the chase began. They made it out of the hotel and into Obinna's car. His driver, Emeka, a loyal man who'd worked for the family for years, didn't ask questions. He just drove, fast, through the streets of Lagos, past the lights and the crowds and the city that Obinna had called home his whole life. Behind them, 3 black SUVs followed, Chief Okonkwo's men, trained and armed and determined. "Where are we going?" Emeka shouted over the sound of screeching tires. "Umwezi," Obinna answered. "Enugu State. We have to get to Umwezi." "That's a 6-hour drive," Emeka said. "They'll catch us before we get out of Lagos." But they didn't, because Mama Neka, sitting in the back seat with Adaeze, began to chant in Old Igbo, words that none of them understood, but all of them felt. The air inside the car thickened, the night outside seemed to bend, and when Emeka looked in the rearview mirror, the SUVs were gone. Not just gone, vanished, like they'd driven into a different road, a different Lagos, a different reality. "What did you do?" Obinna asked, his voice shaking. "I bought us time," Mama Neka said, "but it won't last. They know where we're going. They'll be waiting. The society has people everywhere, and they've had 300 years to prepare for this moment."
The drive to Enugu took 6 hours through the night. They stopped only once for fuel, paying cash, avoiding cameras, moving like fugitives, because that's what they were now. Adaeze sat in the back seat, her hand in Obinna's, her mark still glowing faintly in the darkness. "Are you scared?" she asked him quietly. "Terrified," he admitted, "but not of them. I'm scared I'll fail you again. I'm scared I'll make the wrong choice again. I'm scared that even now, even after everything, I'll find a way to choose my own comfort over your life." Adaeze squeezed his hand. "The fact that you're scared means you're different this time. The king 300 years ago wasn't scared. He was arrogant. He thought he could have everything.
power and love, wealth and destiny. He thought the goddess would forgive him. But gods don't forgive broken vows. They just wait and watch and give you more chances than you deserve. They reached Adaeze just as the sun was rising. The village was small and quiet, surrounded by thick forest and red earth. The people who saw them arrive knew immediately who Adaeze was, the marked one their grandmothers' grandmothers had spoken about, the one who would either save them or doom them. Mama Nneka led them through narrow paths into the forest, past ancient Iroko trees whose roots went deeper than memory. They walked for an hour until they reached a clearing, and in the center of that clearing was a crater, the place where Adaeze Kingdom once stood, the place where it fell. "This is it," Mama Nneka said, "the sacred grove, the heart of the old kingdom, the place where Ani swallowed everything because a king broke his word." Obinna stared into the crater. The air above it shimmered like heat waves, but the morning was cool. He could feel something down there, not evil, but not quite alive either. Power, old power, angry power, waiting. "What do we do?" he asked. Mama Nneka planted her staff in the ground. "Tonight, when the moon is gone and the sky is dark, you must speak the vows that King Obiefuna never spoke. You must choose Adaeze not with words, but with sacrifice. The curse demands balance. The king chose wealth over love, so you must give up your wealth, all of it, everything you own, everything you've built. Only then will the goddess know your choice is real." Obinna felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders like stones. Everything? His company, his investments, his properties, the empire he'd spent 15 years building, the success that defined him, the identity he'd constructed, all of it gone, for a chance, for a woman he'd known, truly known, for less than 2 weeks. Any sane person would walk away. Any logical person would call this madness. But Obinna looked at Adaeze, at the mark glowing on her shoulder, at the hope and fear warring in her eyes, and he knew. Sanity didn't matter. Logic didn't matter. He'd been running from this moment for 300 years. He was done running. But Chief Okunko wasn't done chasing. As the sun climbed higher, villagers came running with news. Black cars, dozens of them, parked on the roads leading into Adaeze. Men in suits, men with weapons, surrounding the village, surrounding the forest. The Society of the Red Hand had arrived, and they brought more than just Chief Okunko. They brought elders from the society, powerful men from all over Nigeria, men who'd kept this curse alive for generations because it fed them, because every time the king chose wrong, every time the cycle repeated, they absorbed a little more power, a little more control. They couldn't let it end. They wouldn't. Mama Nneka gathered the village elders. "We have to hold them off until nightfall," she said. "We have to give the marked ones time to complete the ritual. Can you do that?" The elders looked at each other. They were old. They were unarmed. They were farmers and traders and grandparents. But they were also guardians of something older than money or politics or power. They nodded. "We'll do what we must." The standoff began at noon. Chief Okunko and 30 members of the Society of the Red Hand stood at the edge of the forest, facing 50 villagers armed with nothing but farming tools and faith. "This is foolish," Chief Okunko called out. "You're protecting 2 people who are cursed. Let us take them. Let us end this cleanly. No one has to die today." But one of the village elders, a man named Ikenna, who'd lived 87 years and survived things Chief Okunko couldn't imagine, stepped forward. We're not protecting two people. We're protecting a choice. We're protecting the right to choose love over fear. We're protecting the future from men like you who profit from pain. Chief Okunko's face darkened. Then you will all suffer for your foolishness. He raised his hand, and that's when the forest came alive. Not metaphorically, literally. The trees moved. Roots broke through the ground. Vines reached out like arms. The earth itself, responding to Mama Neka's prayers, to Adaeze's mark, to the goddess who'd been sleeping but was finally waking up. Chief Okonkwo's men fired their weapons at the forest, but bullets don't stop gods.
Inside the sacred grove, Obinna and Adaeze prepared. Mama Neka painted their faces with white chalk. She sang songs in a language that predated English, predated colonialism, predated every border ever drawn across Africa. Professor Okafor had arrived too, carrying the old journal, serving as witness. "You understand what you're giving up?" he asked Obinna. "Everything," Obinna said. "I understand." "And you're certain?" Professor Okafor pressed. "Because once you speak the vows, once you make the sacrifice, there's no reversing it. Even if the curse breaks, even if you survive, you'll be starting over. No wealth, no empire. Just you and her and whatever life you can build." Obinna looked at Adaeze. She was shaking, her eyes wet with tears, her mark glowing so bright now it hurt to look at directly. "I've had wealth," he said. "I've had power. I've had success and status and every comfort money can buy. And every night I woke up screaming. Every night I felt empty. Every night I knew something was missing. If I have to choose between keeping everything and feeling nothing, or losing everything and finally feeling whole, then there's no choice at all. I choose her. I choose love. I choose truth." The sun began to set. The battle between the villagers and the society raged at the forest's edge. Trees fell. Men screamed. The earth shook with every clash. But Mama Neka and the other priestesses held the protective circle around the sacred grove. No one from the society could enter. Not yet. Not while the ancestors were watching. Not while the ritual was beginning. As darkness fell and the new moon left the sky black and empty, Obinna and Adaeze stood at the edge of the crater. Mama Neka gave them the words, ancient words, heavy words, words that tasted like smoke and honey and blood. Obinna spoke first. "I am Obiefuna, king of Umweze, born again. I stand before Ani, goddess of the earth, and I confess my crime. I chose power over love. I chose gold over truth. I chose comfort over courage. And the kingdom fell, and my people died, and the woman I was meant to cherish was lost. I have carried this guilt through lifetimes. I have paid in suffering. But payment is not the same as redemption. So tonight, I choose differently. I give up my wealth. I give up my status. I give up everything I own. Not because the curse demands it, but because she deserves a man who chooses her first. Always, in every lifetime, in every choice. I choose Adaeze. I choose love. I choose truth." And as he spoke those last words, he felt it, like chains breaking, like weights lifting, like waking up from a dream that lasted 300 years. His phone buzzed in his pocket, messages flooding in. His company's board, his bank, his lawyers, everything was crashing. Stock prices plummeting, accounts freezing. The empire he'd built was collapsing in real time. He was losing everything, and he'd never felt more free. Now Adaeze spoke. "I am Adaorah, priestess of Ani, born again. I stand before my goddess and I confess my pain. I have waited through lifetimes. I have watched him choose wrong again and again. I have died and been reborn and died again. And every time,
I asked myself, what did I do wrong? Why am I not enough? But tonight, I understand. It was never about me being enough. It was about him becoming ready. And now he is. So I forgive him. I forgive every choice that hurt me. I forgive every lifetime I spent alone. I forgive the king who let me fall. Because the man standing before me now is not that king anymore. He's someone who learned, someone who grew, someone who finally understands that real power isn't what you own, it's what you're willing to sacrifice. I choose him. I choose us. I choose to break this curse and step into whatever future the goddess allows. The ground beneath them began to crack, not in destruction, but in opening, like a wound finally allowed to heal. Light poured from the crater, not fire, gold light, pure light, the kind that existed before humans had words for it. And from that light, a voice, not words exactly, more like a feeling that filled their minds and hearts and bones. The goddess, Ani, speaking after 300 years of silence. You have chosen well. You have chosen truth. The debt is paid. The curse is lifted. But understand this, children of my children. Breaking a curse doesn't erase its scars. You will still suffer. You will still struggle. Love doesn't make life easy. It makes it worth living. Go now. Build a life that honors what you've learned. Build a love that others can see and say, yes, that's worth choosing. That's worth sacrificing for. That's worth fighting for. Go, and don't waste this chance.
The light faded, the crater stopped glowing, and for the first time in 300 years, the sacred grove was quiet, peaceful, released. Obinna and Adaeze stood there, holding each other, crying and laughing, and trying to believe that it was finally over. The mark on Adaeze's shoulder had changed. The 3 circles were still there, but they no longer glowed with pain. They glowed with something softer, something that looked like hope. But the battle wasn't over. Chief Okonkwo had broken through the village defenses. He stood at the edge of the sacred grove with a dozen of his men, their weapons drawn, their faces twisted with rage. The society had lost their power source. The curse was broken, and they could feel it. The energy they'd been feeding on for generations was gone. They were just men now, mortal men, angry men who just lost everything. You think you've won? Chief Okonkwo shouted. You think breaking one curse changes anything? I still have money. I still have influence. I still have men with guns. And you have nothing. No wealth, no protection, no power. I will destroy you both. I will make sure you regret this. I will haunt you to the ends of the earth. But before he could give the order to fire, something stopped him. Not force, not violence, just an old woman stepping between him and the 2 lovers. Mama Nneka, tiny and frail and completely unafraid. You've already lost, she said quietly. You just don't know it yet. Your power was never yours. It was borrowed, stolen, and now the debt collector has come. Look behind you. Chief Okonkwo turned. His men were on their knees, not from prayer, from pain. They were aging, rapidly. The years they'd stolen, the life they'd extended by feeding on cursed souls, all of it was being repaid. In seconds, they went from middle-aged men to elderly men to something worse. Chief Okonkwo felt it too. His hands, once strong, now shaking and spotted. His face, once proud, now sunken and grey. No, he whispered. No, this isn't possible. This isn't fair. Fair? Mama Nneka laughed, but it wasn't a cruel sound, just tired. You speak of fair after centuries of keeping 2 souls trapped in suffering. You speak of fair after building your empire on stolen pain. The goddess is more merciful than you deserve. She's letting you live. She's just taking back what was never yours. Go home, Chief Okonkwo. Go home and grow old like the rest of us. And pray that when your time comes, she forgives you. Because I'm not sure I would.
Chief Okonkwo and his men retreated, stumbling through the forest like wounded animals. The villagers didn't stop them. They just watched, silent and solemn, as the mighty fell, as the powerful became powerless, as justice, slow but certain, finally arrived. In the days that followed, Obinna and Adaeze stayed in Umueze. They helped build the homes damaged in the battle. They listened to the elders tell stories about the old kingdom. They learned what it meant to live simply, without wealth or status or the weight of cursed history. Obinna's empire collapsed completely. His company was dissolved, his properties sold, his bank accounts emptied. Everything he built for 15 years gone in less than a week. And he didn't mourn it, not once. Professor Okafor visited them a month later. He brought news from Lagos. The scandal had been massive. Billionaire abandoned CEO's daughter for housemaid. Business empire crumbles overnight. Society figures age mysteriously and retire from public life. The media didn't know what to make of it. They called it a breakdown, a mental health crisis, some kind of elaborate scam. But those who knew the old stories, those who remembered the old ways, they understood. They whispered it in markets and churches and family gatherings. The curse of Umueze is broken. The marked ones found each other. The cycle is finished. 6 months after that night in the sacred grove, Obinna and Adaeze were married in a traditional ceremony in Umueze. No cameras, no celebrities, no gold-plated invitations, just family, village, community, the people who mattered. Mama Nkechi came, her face wet with tears, her prayers finally answered. She'd lost a billionaire son but gained a happy one, and that, she realized, was always the better bargain. Mama Nneka performed the ceremony, her old hands steady, as she tied the sacred cloth around their wrists, binding them not with curses this time, but with blessings.
They built a small house on the edge of the forest, near the sacred grove. Obinna used what little money he had left to start a school in the village. Not a fancy school, just a place where children could learn, where they could hear the old stories alongside the new knowledge, where they could grow up understanding that wealth isn't the only measure of success, that power isn't the only measure of worth, that sometimes the most important choice is the one that costs you everything. Adaeze ran a small cooperative teaching women in surrounding villages how to make and sell traditional crafts. Her mark became famous in its own way, not as a cause anymore, but as a symbol, a reminder, a story that mothers told daughters. Choose truth over comfort. Choose love over fear. Choose the hard right thing over the easy wrong thing. And when the gods give you a second chance, don't waste it. But this story, like all real stories, doesn't end with happily ever after, because life doesn't stop just because curses break. 1 year into their marriage, Adaeze became pregnant. The pregnancy was difficult. The village midwives did their best, but complications arose. Things that modern hospitals in Lagos could have handled easily. Things that money could have solved. Obinna held his wife's hand through the pain, through the fear, through the nights when she cried and asked if they'd made the right choice, if breaking the curse was worth this new suffering. And he told her the truth. I don't know. I don't know if we made the right choice. I don't know if love is always enough. But I know that I'd rather struggle with you than succeed without you. I know that every hard day with you is better than every easy day without you. I know that this, right here, right now, this is what it means to be human. To suffer and love and choose and fail and try again. The curse gave us lifetimes of pain, but it also gave us lifetimes of chances. And this is the first lifetime where we're truly alive. Adaeze gave birth to a daughter on a night when the moon was full and the forest was singing. The baby was healthy, strong, beautiful. And on her left shoulder, barely visible, but definitely there, was a small mark. Not the 3 circles of her mother.
Something new, something different. A single circle, incomplete, waiting. Mama Nneka examined the baby carefully, then smiled. A new story, she said. Your course is broken, but your daughter carries her own destiny, her own choices, her own chances to choose right or wrong. That's the gift the goddess gave you. Not freedom from struggle, but the power to choose your struggle, the power to make your own story. 2 years passed, then 5. Obinna and Adaeze raised their daughter in the village. They were happy. Not perfect. They argued sometimes. Money was tight. Life was hard. But they were together. They were free. They were choosing each other every day in the small decisions and the big ones, in the morning prayers and the evening meals, in the laughter and the tears, in the mundane beauty of a life lived honestly. But in Lagos, in the towers of glass and steel, in the boardrooms where power still played its games, new players were rising. Young men and women who'd heard the story of the billionaire who gave it all up for love. And some of them laughed. Some of them said he was a fool. Some of them said love is a luxury for people who can afford to fail. But some of them, a few, a precious few, heard the story and wondered. Wondered if there was more to life than accumulation. Wondered if there was power in sacrifice. Wondered if the old ways, the old wisdom, the old gods might still have something to teach the modern world. And in a university library in Lagos, a young woman studying history found Professor Okafor's journal. The one about Umueze, the one about the curse, the one about the marked priestess and the king who finally chose correctly. She read it 3 times. Then she went to the bathroom and looked at her shoulder in the mirror. And there, so faint she'd never noticed it before, was a mark. Not 3 circles, not 1 circle, something else entirely. A triangle. And as she stared at it, it began to glow. Just slightly, just enough to know it was real. She grabbed her phone, searched online, found stories, rumors, whispers of other marked ones, other curses, other cycles that needed breaking. And she realized that Obinna and Adaeze's story wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The first crack in a dam that had held back truth for too long. The first choice that inspired other choices. The first break that would lead to more breaks. Until maybe, just maybe, all the old curses could be lifted, all the old debts could be paid, all the old cycles could be stopped.
But that's a story for another time. That's a story this young woman will have to write herself, with her own choices, her own sacrifices, her own courage or cowardice. The gods don't write our stories. They just give us the stage, and the audience, and the consequences. What we do with it, that's up to us. That's always been up to us. We just forgot. We just got distracted by wealth and power and the comfortable lies that help us sleep at night. But the marked ones remember. They always remember. And they're waking up, all over the continent, all over the world, carrying marks that glow when the moon is right, carrying stories that demand to be told, carrying choices that will shape the future. And in Umueze, in a small house at the edge of the forest, Obinna woke up in the middle of the night. He'd had a dream. Not a nightmare this time, a different kind of dream, a vision of a young woman with a triangle mark, of other marked ones, of a movement beginning, of the story spreading, of the curse they broke becoming a catalyst for other breaks, other freedoms, other choices. He smiled in the darkness, then he reached over and held Adaeze's hand and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for believing. Thank you for giving me the chance to choose correctly, even if it took 300 years, even if it cost everything, even if the road ahead is still uncertain. Thank you." Adaeze squeezed his hand, still half asleep.
"Thank you for finally choosing me," she murmured. "Thank you for proving that love is stronger than fear, that truth is more powerful than comfort, that some things are worth losing everything for. Thank you for being brave enough to break the cycle." And then she fell back asleep. And Obinna lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathe, listening to their daughter sleep in the next room, listening to the forest outside sing its ancient songs, and he knew he'd made the right choice. Finally, after lifetimes of getting it wrong, he'd finally chosen correctly. And that choice would echo through time, through generations, through every person who heard this story and decided to be brave, to choose love over power, to choose truth over comfort, to choose sacrifice over safety. That choice will change everything. Slowly, quietly, but certainly. The way all real change happens. One person at a time. One choice at a time. One broken curse at a time. Until the whole world was different. Until the old gods could rest. Until the ancestors could smile and say, "Well done, children of our children. Well done." But even in this ending, questions remain. Because life doesn't offer neat conclusions. It offers new beginnings disguised as endings. And so we must ask, what happened to Chief Okonkwo? Did he truly lose all his power? Or did he find new ways to control from the shadows? What happened to Chinara, the rejected bride? Did she move on? Or does she carry her own version of pain and destiny? What about the Society of the Red Hand? Were they truly defeated? Or did they simply retreat and regroup? What about the other marked ones? How many are they? What are their stories? What choices will they make? Will they all choose love, like Obinna and Adaeze? Or will some of them choose differently? Will some of them fail? Will some of them succeed in ways we can't yet imagine? And most importantly, what about you? If you were marked, if you were cursed, if you had to choose between everything you've built and a love that transcends time, what would you do? Would you be brave? Would you sacrifice? Would you break the cycle? Or would you do what's comfortable? What's expected? What's safe? Because that's the real question this story asks. Not what happened to two people 300 years ago, but what's happening to you right now, in this moment, in your life, in your choices. What cycles are you repeating? What curses are you perpetuating? What marks do you carry that you're too afraid to show the world? And when the moment comes to choose between power and love, between wealth and truth, between comfort and destiny, what will you do? Who will you be? What story will you tell? Because the ancestors are watching, the gods are waiting, and your choice, whatever it is, will echo far beyond what you can see. It will touch lives you've never met. It will break chains you didn't know existed. It will create futures you can't imagine. Or it won't. It will perpetuate the same old cycles, the same old pain, the same old curses, depending on what you choose, depending on who you become, depending on whether you're brave enough to let the mark glow, to show the world who you really are, to sacrifice everything for the one thing that actually matters: love, truth, freedom. The choice is yours. It's always been yours. The question is, what will you do with it? If you enjoyed this journey through African folktales, through ancient curses and modern choices, through the timeless battle between power and love, then subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's struggling with their own choices, someone who's forgotten that they have power, someone who's carrying marks they're too afraid to show the world. Comment below and tell us, what would you have chosen? What cycles are you ready to break? What marks are you ready to reveal? Your story matters. Your choice matters. Your voice matters. And together, one story at a time, one choice at a time, one brave soul at a time, we can break every curse our ancestors left us. We can build a world where love wins, where truth matters, where sacrifice is honored, where the marked ones can finally rest. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this story. Until next time, choose wisely, choose bravely, choose love. Dalono. Thank you.